Van Hollen.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend Mr. McGovern, and he's absolutely right. The next vote will be a vote to double down on the Republican budget. I appreciate the answer from my colleague from Utah, Mr. Bishop. What the next vote will allow, the vote on the rule, is for the House to proceed with the implementation of the Republican budget. And therefore, if you think that budget is the wrong direction for this country, you should vote against the rule and not give the House the authority to move forward, because that's what the next vote is all about. And Mr. Speaker, let's just remember what that budget does. And I would just remind my colleagues that the issue in the debate was not whether or not we reduce the long-term deficit in this country. We've got to do that. The issue was how we do that. And the Republican budget did not follow the advice of every bipartisan group that has looked at the challenge of deficit reduction, because those bipartisan groups have said that we need to take a balanced approach, meaning we've got to make some tough cuts, and we passed some in the Budget Control Act, and we need to do more. But they also said we need to deal with the revenue side of the equation. And the Republican budget doesn't ask for one penny from millionaires for the purposes of deficit reduction. It doesn't close one single tax loophole for the purposes of deficit reduction. Not one. In fact, the overwhelming majority of our Republican colleagues have signed a pledge saying they won't do that. They won't close one tax loophole for the purpose of deficit reduction. Now, the American people understand the math of the budget. If you say that we're not going to ask the wealthiest to do a little more as part of reducing the deficit, it means you got to sock it to everybody else even harder. Just this week we saw this play out. Yesterday in the Senate, they had a vote on the Buffett rule. Very simple proposition. Let's ask millionaires to pay the same effective tax rate as their secretaries. Every Democratic senator but one voted for it. Every Republican senator but one voted against it. Contrast to that what's going to happen in the House on Thursday. Here in the House on Thursday, they're going to do another tax break. Look at the Joint Tax Committee, nonpartisan group. Where do the bulk of those funds go to? Hedge funds? Washington law firms? $50 billion added to the deficit in 1 year. It would be $500 billion over 10 years. And when you give tax cuts like that, and you also want to reduce the deficit, it means you cut into everything else. So what do you cut? You do cut the Medicare guarantee. You hit seniors on Medicare, and I'll just show you a chart that shows exactly what they do here. If you look at this chart, it shows the current support that seniors receive under the Medicare program. That's the blue line. This is the percentage of support they get from the Medicare program. As you can see, if you continue the Medicare program, current levels of support, it maintains that at that level. This green line is the level of support that members of Congress get as part of the federal employees' health benefit plan. Members of Congress get a fixed percentage of the premium costs as part of their plan. When the costs go up, members of Congress' support from the plan goes up accordingly. And that's why the level of support for members of Congress, that's that green line, that stays constant over time. But the Medicare voucher plan, Under the Medicare voucher plan, as costs for health care rise, the amount of the voucher seniors get will not keep pace. That's how they reduce the deficit. In other words, another round of tax cuts for millionaires, but for seniors who have a median income today of under $22,000, they're going to give them a voucher that doesn't keep pace with health care costs. For members of Congress, your plan keeps pace with rising health care costs, not for seniors on Medicare. Why? Again, not a balanced approach. What else does it do? Well, we just had a hearing today in the Budget Committee on what it does to Medicaid. and it shreds the social safety net. It cuts Medicaid by $800 billion over the next 10 years. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, by the year 2022, Medicaid will be cut. I ask the gentleman for an additional minute.
Give the gentleman an additional minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
By the year 2022, Medicaid would be cut by 30%. By the year 2050, by 75%. I would remind my colleagues that 2/3 of Medicaid funding goes to seniors in nursing homes and to care for disabled individuals. Another 20% goes for kids from low-income families. And they would whack that in their budget, in the Republican budget, by $800 billion. And at the same time, if you just take the portion of the tax cut in the Republican budget that extends the Bush tax cuts for the folks at the very top, that's $961 billion. But they don't want to ask those Americans to go back to paying the same rates that they were paying during the Clinton administration. Same rates. Economy was booming, 20 million jobs were created, but no, they want to give the folks at the very high end a tax break and cut Medicaid by $810 billion. And those are the choices that are made in the Republican budget, and that's what this vote on this rule is all about, whether we should allow this body to go forward and implement that budget. It's wrong for the country. It's misplaced priorities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I yield myself such time again.
Gentleman's recognized.
My old debate coach is looking down on our actions and smiling, saying his advice was right. Just make the same arguments over and over again, and maybe someone will actually believe those. This actually still is about a sportsman bill and hunting and fishing rights on public property. What the gentleman from Maryland just said is like 99% accurate. There is one slight difference in what he said. That is that this would be deemed until such time as there is a conference report. If there indeed is another avenue to go, ask the Senate to do their work, to do a job, have a conference committee, and actually move forward in that manner. Otherwise, we have to either do it in an improvised way, which is this, or you have to simply not do it at all. Actually, one of the end results of what the other side is telling us to do is simply not do anything. Do not go forward with any ideas. Do not go forward with reconciliation and have a defense sequestration go into effect that would devastate the military, and Secretary Panetta is begging you not to do. You have to do something procedurally to move forward. This vote does not implement anything. This vote allows our committees to go back and do the work that we were supposed to do. You defeat this, and we go back to a policy of doing nothing. And as I said before, there is precedent for what we are doing. 2010, instead of, I don't know why we say we are bearing this in a hunting bill, but in 2010, when we did this deeming practice over another administration, it was buried in Section 4 of House Resolution 1500. And once again, going through a different process back then, because no committee had ever looked at those numbers before they were deemed and passed. This time, we actually passed a bill.